If an IUL is structured correctly and funded properly, there is little downside. In this episode, I'm going to address the question head on. What is the downside of an IUL? What can go wrong? I'm Doug Andrew, and I've been designing universal life policies since 1980 when they were first introduced by E.F. Hutton, who was not an insurance company, by the way. So in this episode, get ready, I'm going to show you the downside and what can go wrong. In fact, in my most recent book, The Laser Fund, I have 12 chapters where I talk about many ways that it is structured correctly, but I always include one story where it was not designed correctly and what went wrong and how you can avoid it. I've often said the saddest thing to me is when somebody comes, they took out a universal life policy maybe 7 or 10 years before, and they say, Doug, mine doesn't seem to be performing very well. You talk about your money doubling every 7 to 10 years, and mine has hardly grown. What's up with this? What am I doing wrong? And I look at it, and sometimes they use one of the companies I use. I use about 6 different companies. I diversify. And maybe they even use the same product, but it wasn't designed correctly. I look at it, and in less than 30 seconds, I go, who set this up? And they go, well, I learned about them, but you know what? My nephew said he had a license and he would do it. And so I just thought he did it correctly. And I go, oh. He had no clue what he was doing. You have way more insurance here than you needed. You may have been earning maybe 10% or 11%, but you're only netting 2 or 3 because the cost of insurance is way higher than it needed to be. Well, can we go back retroactive and give me money? No. That was an expensive relationship with that nephew. Sometimes people say, well, my brother-in-law said he could do it. Don't make that mistake. So let me give you the 5 or 6 reasons why a universal life or an index universal life may not perform as you expected it to. And that's why it's so critical that you go to a professional who knows what they're doing, a specialist that does this all the time, not somebody that just sells all kinds of insurance, because they'll say, oh yeah, I'd love that case, because they earn a commission off of that. If they design it wrong, it may be a big commission for them, and you didn't need to go through that expense if you had it designed correctly with somebody who knows what they're doing. And so I would say the biggest reasons why universal life does not perform as well as maybe people hear me talk about is because it's not structured correctly. What do I mean by that? You must take the least amount of insurance that the IRS will let you get away with based upon your age, your gender, and your health, and you can squeeze down the death benefit. The older you are, the less insurance is required. If you're unhealthy, but you can still sort of fog a mirror, you can take it out or you can use a surrogate, but you're taking the least amount of insurance, and the older you are, you can squeeze it down, because the tax citations TEFRA and DEFRA gave parity. Equality. It doesn't matter if you're a 22-year-old athletic marathon running female, or a 68-year-old geezer like me, or a 75-year-old friend of our family. He was actually 78 when he came to us, and then he took out his other policy when he was 83. He had 3 blocked arteries, adult onset diabetes, a prostate cancer episode, 6 sisters predeceased him, and 3 brothers. And we were able to give him the same 11 netting 10% rate of return that I was earning on mine, and that the 20-year-old female was earning on hers, because the amount of insurance could be squeezed down because of his health issues, but he was still insurable. Many advisors, many insurance agents do not understand what I just said. And so if it's not structured correctly based upon age, gender, and your health to have the least amount of insurance, then you fund it properly by getting in the most money that the IRS allows as fast as they allow. That normally is 5 years under the TAMRA tax citation. So sometimes people take 20 years and they hardly fill it up 30% of the way. Well, it's not going to perform very well when it's designed to hold 500,000 and you've only put in 70,000 or 150,000. it's not going to perform very well. You have to fund it properly, correctly, based upon the time frame you designed, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You design it to be able to perform the best based upon the years of funding, and you put in the most you possibly can. Otherwise, you need to adjust the death benefit down if you're not going to use the room down the road. That's one of the biggest reasons. It's not structured correctly. It's not funded properly. What are some of the other reasons? So the third reason and fourth reason has to do with the same concept. You must structure it correctly under the IRS guidelines. Now, a life insurance contract is the only vehicle in the Internal Revenue Code that allows you to accumulate your money tax-free. So you have to comply with Section 72E of the Internal Revenue Code. It has to be deemed life insurance. If you violate that definition under TEFRA and DEFRA, you move from tax-free over to taxable investments. So 7702 of the Internal Revenue Code allows you to be able to access your money without paying tax. It's income tax-free when you access money or turn on income anytime you want. And so you have to comply with that by not funding it too quickly under TAMRA. So Section 101A has been around also for over a century, and that means that when you ultimately die, the amount of cash in there blossoms. It increases and transfers income tax-free into a death benefit. But when people come to me and they want to put in, let's say $500,000, they could get a ton of life insurance for that. They could get millions of dollars of life insurance, but that's not the objective. If it's a 60-year-old, I know the minimum amount of insurance is going to be around $1,250,000. And they put in $500,000, the minimum death benefit is $1,250,000. 500,000 already qualifies as part of the $1,250,000. So the insurance company is only charging for the difference at risk, the $750,000. When that $500,000 doubles to $1 million, let's say in 7.5, 10 years in the policy, which mine have done for decades, now the insurance company is only at risk for the remaining $250,000. The death benefit under TEFRA and DEFRA was $1,250,000. Now I have $1 million of cash, which is my own money. They only charge me for the remaining $250,000. When that million doubles to $2 million, now I have more cash than the death benefit. TEFRA and DEFRA tax citations say that the death benefit has to stay ahead of it by 5 percentage points. Now the insurance has gotten cheaper as I get older. 30 years down the road, it's costing 1/20th what it did when I started it. That's why at my age, with my universal life policies that I've had for 30 years, if I earned 11% this year, I would net 10.9. But during the average ownership of the policy, if I earn 11, I've probably averaged 10. If I earn 8, I net 7. If I earn 7, I net 6. And in order to make it perform within 1% of the gross rate of return, you have to comply with TEFRA and DEFRA, take the least amount of insurance the IRS will let you get away with. You put in the money as fast as they allow, and now it does not violate the definition of tax-free life insurance under sections 72E and 7702 and 101A of the Internal Revenue Code that allows you to self-insure. That's the tax-free umbrella. If you don't comply with those 3 sections of the code and TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA, it cannot be tax-free, especially when you access it. So the other big reason is most people don't fund it in compliance with TAMRA over a 5-year period to where then they are grandfathered to access the money tax-free. Let me give you the final 3 reasons why it does not perform sometimes or what can go wrong so you can avoid it. So the next couple of reasons may seem obvious to you, but they're pretty common. People use the wrong company. There are over 200 companies out there offering universal life, maybe way more than that now, but I would not touch 190 of them. The company does not meet my minimum requirements for their ratings, and even though there's never been a legal reserve life insurance company ever not honor their claims or anything like that, it's one of the safest places you can put money. I'm very, very picky. I want companies that are not stingy. I don't want a company that says they'll do this and then a few years later they change it and they leave their old policyholders out in the cold, so to speak. I like companies that will incorporate new features and benefits with even the old policy holders. I like companies that have a track record of giving you the benefits instead of keeping it in their coffers. Oh, we're big and strong. And it's because they keep the money they should have been giving you. And so there's only a handful, maybe 10, 12 companies that I would consider putting my serious cash into. So that leaves a ton of other companies, 95% or more, that I would never consider to put my money into. So people choose the wrong company. Well, many times they choose the wrong product. You can go to an insurance company and be shown a product for whatever reason by an advisor who doesn't know what they're doing, and you use the wrong product. Maybe you use the product that was designed for something totally different as a financial goal than for retirement and the highest net spendable income down the road. So I found a lot of people may have the right company, but they use the wrong product. What about the people who use one of the right companies and one of the right products, and it still doesn't work? How does that happen? Here's why. I'm coming full circle because it happens because the advisor was not proficient. They didn't know what they were doing. You, again, can't believe how many people said, hey, I use the company that you use, Doug. I use the product that you use. What's up? And I can tell in less than 30 seconds, wait, who designed this thing? They structured it wrong. They were not proficient. And that's why, clear back in 2007 and 2008, I had over 3,000 financial advisors, insurance agents, CPAs, tax attorneys come through a 3-day training and pay over $6,000 to learn. But they oftentimes would go out and they would not help their clients. And I would say, what's up? They would go, well, Doug, we don't have time to educate people like you do. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So what happened is I designed a proficiency exam, a 100-question proficiency exam with multiple choice and true and false, and then another 30 questions essay. Do you know that out of the 3,000 advisors who took that exam, only about 200 could pass the exam? That's pretty pathetic because the others were not using it, and if you don't use it, you lose it. They forget, and those advisors are not proficient anymore because you forget if you're not doing it every day. Out of those 200, there was only maybe 10%, 20 that I really trusted were doing it so much on a regular basis that I would point my clients to those advisors, and I still do that to this day. It's critical you have somebody who knows the latest and greatest ways to structure and the features that are available and how to apply them to help you have the best net internal rate of return. And so I'm actually designing another proficiency exam to see who really understands how to do these correctly. But let me warn you, most advisors that you probably hear or watch on TV, the Dave Ramseys, Susie Ormans, Rick Edelmans, David Box, they wouldn't even score 20 or 30% on this exam because they wouldn't understand 70 to 80% of the questions. They're not taught this stuff. Again, this exam is not for any advisor. It's for those specialists. In my most recent book, there's actually 14 questions that you can go through. And if you ask those questions of an advisor and they hum-ha or they go, I don't know for sure, I'll check it out, that is a warning sign. And you can tell if an advisor understands how to do this. So let me show you how to get your free copy of my most recent best-selling book for free. If you have not claimed your free copy, go to laserfund.com, laserfund.com. You contribute $5.95 toward the shipping and handling, and I will buy the book. I'll fire it out to you free. It's 300 pages of charts, graphs, explanations, and 62 actual client stories. You can learn how to be able to tell if an advisor knows what they're doing, and you'll read those 14 questions that you ought to ask of your advisor if you're considering taking out a max-funded IUL.